If you, like many other people, have no idea how much money you need to be saving for retirement or how often you need to be saving it, or are just generally worried about not having enough money in retirement, then this video is for you. Make no mistake about it, you might not like what you hear in this video, but ultimately each and every one of us are accountable for our own financial well-being in retirement, whether we like it or not. There's a common misconception that the government is responsible for looking after you in retirement and providing you with a regular source of income to help sustain yourself, but this is simply not true. But Dan, how is this a misconception? Doesn't the government already provide retirees with a regular source of income in retirement? You're correct, they do, but I wouldn't go so far as to say that they're responsible for doing so. The responsibility to ensure that you have enough money to sustain yourself falls on you. The government are merely providing a baseline level of income to ensure that their citizens stay above the poverty line. But even with these systems, it's estimated that close to 20% of European citizens are at risk of poverty in retirement. To make matters worse, those existing systems are under threat, and that baseline level of income might not be guaranteed for much longer. Nearly 1/3 of our workforce relies solely on benefits provided by government in retirement. So if those benefits were to be reduced, delayed, or eliminated, a lot of people will be left in a very sticky scenario. So in this video, I'm going to be explaining why all of these problems exist, what actions are being taken to solve these problems, and most importantly, what you can do to ensure that you are protected. But before we begin, if I could ask that you take 2 seconds out of your day to leave a like on the video, and if you are new around here, don't forget to subscribe. Those of you who have been around here for a while now will know that I'm a big believer in understanding the bigger picture. And so I would encourage you to watch each section of this video so you can really get to grips with what's going on here. But I do accept that some people might not want that level of detail, so I've timestamped the video below for your convenience. So if you don't know already, in retirement, your money will normally come from 2 sources. The first is from government, and this is known as the state pension or Social Security as it's better known in the US. Whether or not you'll be entitled to receive this payment from government will depend on whether you've paid the required amount of tax contributions over the course of your working life. In short, when you work in any country, the government and tax authorities will deduct a portion of tax from your salary known as social insurance. The tax paid will go into a social insurance fund along with all the other social insurance payments from workers around the country. This large pool of money is then used to make payments, among other things, to older citizens who are in retirement today. That's the key concept. The workers of today are paying for the retirement of the retirees of today. Most workers are okay with this system because they believe that they too will benefit from the system in the future. But as we'll discuss later on, this is not necessarily the case. The second likely source of income in retirement is from your own personal investments, including what's known as a private pension. Most people are familiar with the process and idea of investing in stocks like Apple, Facebook, and Microsoft. Even more recently, people have become familiar with the process of investing in cryptocurrencies. But when it comes to private pensions, there's this mysterious mental block that people just can't cross. In fact, a lot of people think that pensions are just for old people, and they're not something that a young person needs to think about. This is completely untrue, and again, we'll discuss why a little later. The issue with discussing pension investing is that the process is different depending on where in the world you live. But normally, one of 2 methods or both are available. The first method involves using a pension investment account to invest directly in the likes of stocks and bonds. The second method involves using a pension investment account to invest in pension funds, where your money, along with the money of many other investors, is used to invest in financial and other assets. Both methods normally come with tax benefits at the point of investment, throughout the life of the investment, and when the value of the investment is eventually drawn on. The key message is that in retirement, your money will normally come from the government or from the personal investments that you've made over the course of your life, or indeed a combination of both. Now let's discuss the problems faced by government and working people worldwide when it comes to pensions and retirement. The first is financial education, or a lack thereof. According to Irish Life, who are one of the biggest pension providers in Ireland, 90% of workers are not on track for a financially comfortable retirement. This statistic is driven by two key factors. Number one, people are not investing in pensions from an early age. And number two, people are not making large enough pension investments consistently over the course of their lives. So we have to ask ourselves, why is this the case? The fact of the matter is that most people don't even realize that any of this is happening around them. Because our society does not educate on topics like saving, investing, and retirement planning, our people aren't even aware of the problem before it's too late. One of the principal concepts underpinning successful investing is that time is your best friend, and the earlier you start, the greater your potential reward becomes. But how can we expect people to be optimal investors and retirement planners when they aren't even aware of this basic concept? Who exactly is to blame here? Well, it's not as easy as just blaming one singular party for this great failing. In my opinion, it boils down to the fault of government, employers, and us as individuals. On the part of government, policy changes are drastically needed to get people investing in pensions early, often, and sufficiently. On the part of employers, more action is needed to ensure that all employees are fully aware of the pension investing options that are available to them. And on the part of us as individuals, I believe that we are oftentimes too quick to point the finger. We need to take accountability for our own financial futures. And if that means going out of our way to educate ourselves on the financial markets, on retirement planning, on taxation, whatever it may be, then so be it. You might not agree with this, and you might think that it's unfair that you have to go out of your way to educate yourself on these topics. But let me tell you that if you don't look out for your own financial future, nobody else will. Part of the problem is indeed a lack of understanding, but another part of the problem is societal norms. Most people generally accept that it's the norm to work, save for a deposit on a home, get a mortgage, and then continue to work to pay off said mortgage. The issue is that a mortgage represents the single largest liability that most people will take on in their lives, meaning that it comes with a high financial cost. Therefore, because so much money is required to pay off the mortgage, not much money is left over for investing. And because a lot of people want to get on the property ladder as soon as possible, they put off investing in their early years to save for a home, and then further put off investing until they can afford to both invest and pay off the mortgage, which might not be until their 30s or 40s. Remember how I mentioned earlier that a lot of people think that pensions are just for old people? Well, that thought process comes down to failures in financial education, because the reality is that pension investing involves making investments in financial or other assets in the hope that your pool of money grows to an amount which can help sustain you in retirement. And like with all investments, as we mentioned, the earlier you start, the better. So while yes, pensions are used by older people for income in retirement, it's actually younger people who should be focusing on them as early as possible to maximize the potential future income that they receive. The second problem concerns the money that pensioners receive from the government in retirement. Essentially, the current system is not sustainable and needs to be overhauled. As we explained earlier, the basic concept underpinning the existing system is that the workers of today are paying for the retirement of current retirees in the hope that they too will receive the same benefit when they reach retirement. However, this is unfortunately not as guaranteed as you might think. You see, most countries worldwide are facing the problem of aging demographics. People are living longer, meaning that they will spend more time in retirement. The longer someone's in retirement, the more money that's required to be paid out from the social insurance fund. Do not underestimate the severity of this problem. For example, in Ireland, the ratio of workers to pensioners is currently 4.5 to 1, but this is set to fall to 2.3 to 1 by 2050, meaning that pensioners will effectively double in size relative to workers. This means there's less social insurance contributions available relative to the number of people in retirement, creating a shortfall. There are three solutions to this problem: increase social insurance tax, tax, reduce pension benefits, or delay the retirement age. As you can imagine, none of these solutions are favourable, and for any government to suggest any of them would represent political suicide, and so the can keeps getting kicked down the road and the problem continues to worsen. This is why I really dislike the existing system, and it's looking more and more like a state-sponsored Ponzi scheme from the perspective of younger workers, in the sense that younger workers are buying into this promise of future retirement benefits when there's no concrete guarantee that they'll even receive them. As well as this, the existing system is expensive and ineffective at protecting against inflation. So let's talk solutions. What is being done about the retirement and pension problem? Again, this largely depends on where in the world you live, but ultimately we all need to end up at the same destination, which is sufficient pension income in retirement. I'll start by saying that the Irish government's decision to increase weekly state pension payments by €5, as well as the inaction in delaying the retirement age, is not any sort of solution, even if it might benefit a small portion of people in the short term. The real solutions come from policy changes around private pensions. The reason why is because with private pensions, you have control over where your money is invested. You have control over how much money you invest. And you're getting attractive tax benefits for choosing to invest. All of those factors allow you to generate much higher levels of pension income in comparison to the state pension. So therefore, people have a much greater chance at financial freedom by privately investing in pensions, rather than simply relying on the government for support. Not to mention that if our people were to have sufficient private pensions, this would relieve the government of a significant financial burden. In order to achieve this, a system of pensions auto-enrollment needs to be introduced in each and every country worldwide. Auto-enrollment means that every employee is automatically opted into a pension scheme, and a default percentage of their income is invested into the scheme for their future benefit. This is unlike many current systems, whereby the employee has to opt into the pension scheme on their own, which, as we discussed earlier on, is unlikely due to poor levels of financial literacy and unhelpful societal norms. Auto-enrollment would ensure that employees are at least making a start towards building up their own private pension provisions as soon as they commence employment, as compared to leaving it until their 30s or 40s, where they will have missed out on many valuable years of compound interest. We also need solutions to address the high costs associated with certain pension products as compared to the likes of ETFs, where ongoing fund charges are reaching incredibly low levels. I understand that it's not as easy as just lowering costs, but I definitely see the next great innovation in this space being low-cost pension products on par with the likes of Vanguard and iShares ETFs. Or alternatively, if the Irish government would be so kind as to let us run our own private pension investment accounts with existing brokers, then there will be no need to introduce low-cost pension products. Let me invest my pension contributions into low-cost ETFs if I want to. Don't restrict me to high-cost mutual funds offered by a small number of players. With regards to the state pension and social security, I'm personally of the opinion that these existing systems need to be phased out. I don't think there's much point in increasing social insurance tax indefinitely, increasing the retirement age indefinitely, or reducing the benefits received. Instead, I believe that accountability should be placed in the hands of the working people to start investing in their financial futures, and reserve government financial support for those who truly need it. But in order for that to work, there needs to be adequate systems of financial education to appropriately convey the message to the people. And there also needs to be very strong domestic policies supporting private pension investing. Don't get me wrong, this is definitely a long-term play, and I'm in no way suggesting that government financial support should cease overnight. But I do think this move would be in the best interests of the people and the sustainability of our social support systems. With all of that being said, what does this mean for you? What can you be doing to make sure that you're positioned for financial freedom in retirement? First of all, I would strongly encourage you to take accountability for your own financial education. This stuff is very important and it will 100% impact your life at some point in the future. So I think you owe it to your future self to understand why pension investing is important, why it's valuable, why it's critical that you start early, and what options are available to you. If you're from Ireland, I have videos on this channel covering pensions in detail. If you're not from Ireland, I would recommend researching content which is relevant to your country's pension system, because again, the pension process is different in every country worldwide. Second thing you can do, factor pension investing into your monthly budget. The way I view this is very simple. My take-home pay is my pay after pension investments have been made. I pay my future self first and my present self second. Now, the extent to which you do this is entirely up to you and what your short, medium, and long-term intentions are. I personally like to take full advantage of the tax benefits of pension investing, and so I maximize my efforts to do so. But I would say that so long as you are cognizant of your pension investing and you're constantly thinking whether or not you could be doing more in that regard, then that's a start. Third thing you can do, make sure your pension investments are scaling with your salary. We mentioned earlier that 90% of workers are not on track for a financially comfortable retirement. One of the main reasons why is because most people are not investing large enough amounts continuously over the course of their lives. In order to do that, you need to make sure that your pension investments are increasing alongside any pay increases that you might receive. And finally, perhaps one of the most important things that you can be doing is making sure that you're not invested in a default pension strategy, especially if you're young. When you start making investments into a corporate pension scheme or otherwise, you might find that your contributions are being placed into a fixed or default investment strategy, where all employee contributions are automatically invested. These strategies are normally A, expensive, and B, conservative. The younger you are, the more risk you can afford to take on. And so it makes very little sense to be invested in a pension fund comprised of bonds and cash when you're in your 20s. Instead, you should be looking for some equity exposure. So double and triple check that where your pension investments are going makes sense. So that concludes this week's rant on pensions and retirement, and I really do hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy this week's video, please do let me know in the comment section below. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.